Hello, this is the CI/CD UX meeting. Bi-weekly, we meet bi-weekly now, right? Um, for February 24, 2021. I'm going to start with some FYI items I think you all know. Friends and Family Day coming up this Friday. We also have one scheduled for March 19th, so add that to your calendars. And tomorrow we have the first pilot for the CI/CD and Create UX Personal Growth Day. If you haven't checked yet the updates for the other designers and what they're going to be working on, I suggest maybe just have a look, see if it's inspiring, see if there's something that you can work on together. But other than that, anything, no action items required. And I'm going to jump right into the first item because I actually wanted to spend some time asking you for feedback and clarifying if there's any questions left on the engagement survey results for our team. I've just seen I created this issue to track what we're going to be working on. And in my suggestions, you see two issues: focus on growth and development and your manager and action themes. So I just want to review quickly. Let me share my screen with you because I updated the body of the issue and added a couple of action items. I apologize for all the mentions on this issue in advance, but I just want to align and see if we are all on the same page on what we need to accomplish for this quarter. So as we discussed growth and development, I added a bunch of things here related to us learning more about career development opportunities at Gitlab and what does the organization today provide as opportunities in your role and outside of Gitlab. So just to recap a couple of things, if possible, well, I put March 5th, but if possible, continue working on your personal development plans, document, whatever you want to call it, so that we can discuss and in a way kind of wrap it up for Q1 and review the career development and engineering development handbook pages and continue to identify some opportunities for your growth. There's a lot of documentation in the handbook around career development. I think this is the most important ones. So also add a due date, but feel free to work on this when you have the time. And another important thing, I think that's, you already seen Pedro sharing some content, is to look into career and growth development benefits. Now the company has, I think this is the tab, yeah. Company has a number, let me scroll to the top here, a number of opportunities, right, or reimbursements that GitLab can give us in terms of conferences, academic studies, trainings. So if there's anything that you would like to work on this year that would add, would be beneficial to your skills and your personal growth, please have a look at this page. And if you have anything, if there's anything interesting for you, let me know so that we can work on an approval for that. And I think last item is, well, we're gonna have to do that anyways, but accessibility and the LinkedIn training. This one we all have to do this quarter, and it will adapt to our skill sets, our career development. So I added this here as a reminder that this is something that we are all being required to do, but also it's part of our growth and development opportunities. Last one, Focus Friday. I put it as a stretch. Initially wasn't required, but I put a stretch. I continue to encourage you all to incorporate Focus Friday as not just a day to catch up on things that, you know, kind of spill over from the beginning of the week, but as a day or at least a couple of hours to focus on items that are important to your personal development and make that something standing in your agenda, not just for this quarter, but if you can do it, you know, as part of your workflow, will be cool. And then some tasks for myself. So communicating, continue exercising this and producing some content and clarifying the product designer, the designer growth plan path, whatever you want to call this, with you all. Okay, so too much talking. Questions, thoughts, next steps. Okay. So this has a due date for the end of April, and before the end of the quarter, or at least by the first week of Q2, I think it would be nice for us to do a retrospective and then just talk about how and if these things um, helped us in terms of growth and development. If you have any questions, let me know. And oh yeah, I see there's a couple of questions here. Who wrote this? Who wants to voice these questions in the document?
Oh, I have the next agenda point.
Oh, sorry, Ian.
No worries.
Okay, next up to here.
So unrelated to growth, sorry about that. Tim and I are kicking off a new initiative to kind of take the jobs to be done. And we're talking about moving it so that the jobs to be done are also defining the testing coverage that we have for stability, especially in the container registry. We've had some issues with that. So it's a very particular interest. And we were thinking that our top jobs to be done should include the critical paths that need to be covered by testing first. And it was an interesting way to use the jobs to be done that we hadn't considered before, because before it was kind of defined our UX scorecards and was documented in the handbook, and then we kind of talked about them. So my question is, how does everybody else use jobs to be done outside of those two things of like pasting it in an issue when you need it, and then the scorecards?
I'm trying to think. First of all, I think it's a very happy coincidence that both of us would be working on something similar, so also could sync up on this, because I'm doing something very similar for CI. And so one really good application of jobs to be done that I have seen when put to practical use was when we tried to divide the areas within CI and pipeline authoring, like where the divisions would be. So if you look at, I'm trying to find that the link which has, yeah, here, there you go. Okay, I'm putting it at the beginning for now. I'll format later. So if you go to this link and you look at that, if you scroll and look at the infographic sort of thing which is there, that it basically is divided on the basis of jobs to be done. I mean, that hasn't been put very exclusively anywhere, that hasn't been even vocalized, but that's the basis on which we have divided the areas that we'd be working on. So it really gave us a boundary. And you just mentioned that you would also be covering the critical paths, which is otherwise like considered under testing. And that's using template. I don't know if you have looked at it. I think you would have looked at it, which is on the jobs to be done page. It sort of it has been, so I've been watching today morning. Yeah, I think we have a lot of to catch up on. So if you look at the process which is defined in that Bureau template, it also kind of triggers you to consider the whole process. And I don't think we would be able to divide things, the connected jobs to be done, which are taken care by, in my case, pipeline authoring, maybe few in testing and release. So all those things would come into the picture, but maybe while like arriving at the final result of the whole process, we have to be a little, like we have to consider what's more useful for our personal stage group and what is it that we need to pass on. I know your question was like how we are using jobs to be done otherwise. I don't have a very good answer for that, but I'm very excited that you're working on this.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Vitika.
And I added here a link to a YouTube video where Jackie, I think it's maybe maybe less than 5 minutes video of Jackie going over why we use the jobs to be done framework in release management. And other than validating things, defining testing maturity, etc., we use the jobs to be done that were mapped to create the maturity plan for the product and for the some of the categories. So when we started looking to the scenarios, the jobs to be done were really like, okay, this is the scenario and how this is how it translates to, for example, an interface or the 3 years vision. So I'm not sure if you did that for package as well. Did you work on the vision prototypes package, Ian?
We started to do an investigation of prototypes for our 3-year vision. And we discovered really quickly that a lot of what we needed to include was irrelevant in the user interface. So it was like we needed to expand to include all of Linux packages, which like we could make a UI that has a Linux package in it, but it's not going to be different. So instead, we're shifting kind of our attention to refactoring the jobs to be done and then finding ways to better utilize them across our entire team and other parts of the organization as well. For example, like QA testing has their own discussion about how to prioritize what to test. What we're considering and talking about now is the jobs to be done should tell us what needs to be tested, because we have a hierarchy of, we know this job to be done is the most important one, and here's the acceptance criteria to be able to perform this job, etc. I was just kind of curious if anybody else had different ways of getting the team together using jobs to be done, because otherwise it just kind of felt like it was me and Tim, my PM, we're the only ones talking about it.
Yeah. So I think it was similar to what Jackie and I did. So looking at the jobs to be done, and in terms of the vision, the 1 year and 3 year vision, and really extrapolating what we could potentially prototype and present to customers to validate just some of the not so ripe ideas. But also in terms of jobs to be done themselves, like presenting the jobs and making them available to the teams, what Jackie used to do was to sometimes present the opportunity canvas and to review that together with the engineering teams. So with everyone during the Think Big sessions or whatever sessions. And then she would walk us through what she learned about that specific job to be done and how that related to the next milestone or the updated vision for a specific category. So in a way, it was everything around jobs to be done and around the maturity and the maturity plan. I'm going to try to find something documented around that. I'm sure there's still some handbook pages, kind of give you a visualization, better visualization, but I would say watch that video, because then it's the PM talking and it's pretty much how she presented that also to teams. I hope it helps.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, I totally missed. I'm also working on this same as research for CI, and of course, jobs to be done is all that the whole thing is based on. And one thing that I've noticed, I'm very sure other people who, Hannah, you have conducted the CMS research, you might have also noticed that the maturity that we talk about, even when we talk in terms of a jobs to be done. So a jobs to be done is, it's always associated with a certain persona. So this is a question that I have, and maybe I'll bring it up in the, I have more findings from the research, that it looks like that the workflows, they are more optimized, or they are more mature for a certain persona specifically. In my case, I would say Devon. And how do we actually represent that when we talk about how mature our stage group is?
So I think there's a,
yeah, that's.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think that's something that's important to align, that we don't associate a job to be done to a persona. We don't associate a job to be done to a persona or a technology or a product or anything like that. So it's just a job that someone needs to complete or to perform in their day-to-day jobs. So I'll link the page here if someone has the page, so that we can see how to frame the job to be done. I think that's important to highlight. And can you repeat the last question, Vitika, so I know I'm answering it correctly? How do we represent?
Yeah, how do we kind of indicate that there's a certain persona which would be more benefited from features in a stage group? Because I understand. So I was also walking through this whole process of jobs to be done today, and I realized that there may be different kinds of executors for that JTBD, but we kind of take into consideration a proto persona that's kind of an aggregate of all the executors. But we do have, like, we do keep someone in the focus. but it's very apparent that when I talk about this particular, I mean, I'll take an example. So let's say optimizing a pipeline. So that's, I mean, even if I don't mention, it is it is a task that's mostly performed by DevOps engineers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can skip maybe mentioning that, but how do it's indicated in every result as well that this bends more toward Devon. It's pretty apparent from the results as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm trying to find the deliverables so you kind of have an idea of how what I'm used to do, right, with jobs to be done. Ian, if you have a different experience, please also share that. So I'm going to add here the opportunity canvas. This is for runbooks, right?
Okay.
So this is where, at least what I'm used to, this is where we talk about the personas that we are going to cover, right? On that specific thing that we want to validate. So the problem is around release managers, Devon, Sasha, Delani, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not sure how you're documenting that. Maybe that's where I'm going to fail on answering this question, is that when I would document and propose the feature, propose the enhancement, or propose the functionality around the job to be done, that's when I talk about this is solving a problem for persona XYZ. The problem is still persona agnostic, but it will solve that specific pain point for that specific persona. That's it. The job itself would still be agnostic, right? Ian, can you help me trying to answer the question?
We do something very similar where a job is inherently agnostic from the persona or user type and even the tool. And then from there, when we're talking about either a specific task that has to be performed related to that job or a person who has to manage that job, that's when the conversation comes in of most of the time, the person impacted by this task is the engineer, is Devon. And so we tailored this part of the experience to be Devon in mind. And we based that choice on this survey that said everyone that cared was blah, blah, blah. And so we bring the persona into the solution, but the job is still, anybody could have performed the job and technically it should still work. We just focused on the personas we have data or believe to be most impacted by this. And that sometimes you'll have a job to be done where a persona performs the first half of the task and then a totally different persona has to perform another part related to the same job. So that's how it's still agnostic from the persona.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps,
Okay,
but that's how we kind of do it.
That really helps. So in terms of documentation, yes, we have absolutely kept it persona agnostic. But what you just said, like, how do we have to consider those and connect the JTBDs with the persona? Like, at what, under what circumstances and in what kind of application? That it really helped me.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll just sum it up that there are certain parts, like certain JTBDs that scored higher in the CMS. That just means that those jobs to be done were easier to perform. Maybe they have a higher maturity level, but we wouldn't focus on the part that this is like more under the area of a DevOps engineer or whatever the persona is.
Yeah, and I think that's fine because our product is so complex and there's like so many personas interacting with the interface, interacting with a certain part of the workflow. I had a similar challenge in release management where I think I mentioned this before. We had a very technical release manager or just a DevOps engineer responsible for release management tasks. And we had someone that was the release manager that wrote the blog posts, that created, the marketing content, etc., and was not technical at all. So we had to build technology or like API backend things for the technical persona that didn't want to use the GitLab UI. And we wanted to build a GitLab UI based on top of the backend need, right, of the technical persona, because that person didn't know how to code. So I think that's where the point we get where my experience is that you're just going to have to break the scenarios and in a way work with these micro jobs, the micro tasks dedicated to personas, and that those might become separate features, right? And from
Got it.
going back to the point where we use the jobs to be done to build the maturity or like the vision for the feature is like, what do we want to build first? Do we want to build first the
Right.
API or the API? So that's where the those this vision map for the jobs to be done can enter to help you give the more confidence on what you are prioritizing in terms of a roadmap.
Got it.
No.
So personas, they play a part when it comes to when it comes down to execution to I mean better understand the requirements and like keep in mind the kind of person who would be using the feature to make it like more usable for them.
Yeah. So I'm gonna quote the
One thing you can,
Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
one thing that we also do with the persona and the jobs to be done is as things mature, so the package registry itself is actually doing pretty well. We will note
Mhm.
that for Devon, like a developer role, it was really easy. But when we introduced someone who was less technical, but like a sysadmin, who had to deal with like billing and consumption and those kinds of things, it was challenging. And we can use that data to say the same job to be done is being performed. But because they're two different people, there's two different experiences. We've got this one going really well. Now let's look at that second one. And that's how you can also use persona to expand on something that's already there. So you hit it with the primary person, didn't test well with a secondary person. Now we could get attention in that area too. Make the UI more friendly, for example.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much.
Heads up, I think all this information is in the handbook. I know that it's a lot. I know it's a lot. Whenever I have a question, I go there because the research team, they put a lot of effort in documenting all these scenarios and all these questions. So have a look, see if there's a video, see if there is a way that you can consume this information a bit more easily. But there is
Yep.
guidance around why, how to validate, what happens in scenario A, B, C, D, and how jobs to be done differ, for example, from user stories. I think it's also important for us to be empowered to answer those questions when PMs or the counterparts kind of get stuck in the whole jobs to be done framework universe. And if you have, of course, any questions or if you have any learning to share, please do so. I think we're all learning here
Sure.
on the fly. Yeah. Daniel is like, what are they talking about? What are these crazy?
And I'm just
I'm in
looking
sponge
through.
mode, just absorbing all the information.
Awesome. And I'm just gonna add this here also to the link to the doc. There's some information of what isn't a job to be done and some examples. So have a look. That's a hot topic for us.
Yep.
Any other comments on this topic? Right? No?
So I have something very connected, which is lined up, but it's after your topic.
No, go ahead. If it's a lineup, mine is just a heads up.
Oh, okay. So I would quickly share my screen. So I was exploring this particular template when I actually started off with finding out or documenting the jobs to be done for CI. I did not use this template, but I've thought that since I have enough data, enough information at hand now from different researches and even the previous researches, I would give it a go. I mean, I would follow the different all the steps which are recommended in this mural template, and I've also found some videos which I have added to the document as well, which talk about how to use this. And here, when I started focusing on this particular stage that talks about job map, like customize the stage of the job map to your domain. When it's, I mean, it says your domain, but if you talk about CI is not something that's, I mean, of course, it spans, right? I mean, there are different area of expertise which are kind of contained within CI. For example, testing, deployment, and even some release stuff. So I just wanted to share that what I have thought is I include all those steps which are kind of contained within CI without discriminating is and is not very extremely relevant to the features that I work with. But towards the end, when it would come to prioritization, maybe I would focus only on the ones that CI could act upon. So I wanted to know any thoughts that any of you have, if you have used this template before, or even if you haven't, like any tips that you want to give me.
I'll be honest, I never used this template before. I don't even
Uh-huh.
think I've seen this one before, because when I worked with the jobs to be done with Jackie, we were the first, one of the first teams doing that, um, and the maturity scorecard as well. So I'm not familiar um, with this side of the process. And Ian, do you
Okay.
have any thoughts on that?
Nope, I'm in the exact same boat. So sorry. I have not used the template.
No problem. So,
They-
I mean, I would share my experience as I progress with this, but yeah. So maybe in the next meeting that we have, I would give a run through because my agenda is to use this next week. Let's
Awesome.
see how that
Yeah,
pans out.
please do, because it sounds very structured and very useful, and perhaps we can kind of adapt the parts that you think are most useful into a more
Right.
condensed version that we can add to our own handbook or something like that.
Yeah.
That's so. This is from the handbook, and I mean, I saw this before as well, but
Mm.
because it looks so complex, I kind of skipped it when I was doing the documenting the jobs to be done for CI. But now I think this is going to be very handy, especially when I want to make sure that there's nothing missed, especially when we have some assistance with the information.
Yeah, I used a sheet with the together with Jackie, so I'm trying to find
Mhm.
that jobs to be done. Is it this one? Yeah, this one. So Jackie and I used to track. Maybe that's what this spreadsheet is replacing. I'm just gonna add here in the chat because it's faster. Oh, we lost Ian. Ah, no, he dropped. Um, so where is your point? Here.
Oh, this
So,
is interesting.
yeah, this is how Jackie and I used to track. So you see that's very incomplete, but at that point we were doing the environments. So if you look at the third tab, yeah. So these are all the
Mhm.
jobs that we mapped um, out, and I think that's what the this mural template, because we talk about priority. If you look at the second tab, oops, I should probably be sharing my screen so others see later on. Yeah. So here you have the category. If we had created an extra issue, would go here, and then the maturity path, priority.
Right.
But this is all again. I think that's a next step from that exercise of the mural, where this
Yeah,
is
I think so.
how you prioritize it, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's a step I think that I would also be taking Tao's help on, especially with the prioritization part.
Mhm.
So I want something that we can quickly collaborate on, like a platform that it's
yeah,
easier to collaborate.
yeah. Try it out and see if it works for you. I think also what's in the handbook, it's something that is prescribed, but it needs to work, right? And if it works differently
Right.
for you, and if you think there is any feedback or changes that could be applied, that's, were beneficial during your process, open a merge request update, because these are, yeah, guidelines to help you figure out this process together and to facilitate. So it's good that you're being the guinea pig for this.
I expected someone else that someone would have already been a guinea pig and I may be
No.
the third, fourth in the queue.
Good luck. And I know we are at time, but I just want to kind of give this heads up so it stays recorded.
Uh-huh.
Pedro shared, I think yesterday, in the UX Slack channel, a thread about upcoming UX and conference events. So
Right.
I mentioned you in that one.
Yep.
But for the others or people who are going to watch this later on, please review the growth and benefit page that I mentioned earlier in this call, that talks about
Hmm.
what type of benefits, what type of events, and how much you can ask for a refund if you're
Okay.
interested in, yeah, attending a conference or doing a course. Yeah,
This
that's
is great.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun for us. So
Thank you so much.
um, Anything else, Vitika?
Nothing else. Just for an FYI, I have put a link to a tweet which is about pipeline. So I felt that this tweet was framed in a very interesting way, so it would anticipate some interesting, replies, which is imagine we never invented the CI/CD pipeline. How would you improve quality? So I've just been following, and people have so far been giving very nice feedback. Yeah, and I of course don't have any great insight from this, but for fun and for like looking at things through a different lens, I found this useful.
That's fun. Telemetry from production. Thanks for sharing. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Vitika, enjoy the rest of your day. I
You
see,
too.
if not tomorrow, I see you on Monday.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.